uniform.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Lucy Wamaida Machugu, the Vice President, Kenyatta University. And I want to represent all students in the universities in Kenya because actually we were on the streets and we would wish to inquire some answers from you. First is to appreciate the government and the Ministry of Education because you've set an event on the 9th of August at KICD for all the student leaders and all the students to discuss on the funding model. So some of the questions I would wish to inquire answers from you, Mr. President. Number one, why did you come up with the funding model? How does the funding model work? Do you feel like the implementation of the funding is okay? What is the criteria used to group people to different categories? That is about the funding model. Number two, the accommodation prices in the universities. That is the hostel prices. They are very expensive for us to afford. Mr. President, what are you doing about this? We cannot be able to afford houses or hostels where we are living in universities. What are you doing, Mr. President, about this? Something else about the job opportunities. Once we graduate from the university, we are told, maybe when you go and seek for a job opportunity, we are asked to give a 5-year work experience or a 3-year work experience. Yet, we've just graduated. Where will we get the experience from if you are not given the chance to get the experience? So, Mr. President, how can you help us on that? Lastly, Mr. President, what are you doing to re-engineer the National Youth Council? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lucy. And by the way, you are very smart. Now, let me say, you've asked me two fundamental questions. The new universities funding model, why? Very important question, why? When I came into office, the universities were struggling. They had a 60 billion shilling debt. Many universities were paying their lecturers half the price, half the salary. It was near a crisis. And many vice chancellors agree with me. So it became necessary. And you know, I have a history. Once upon a time, I was Minister for Higher Education. So I understand that space pretty well. And when I came into office then as Minister for Higher Education, I am the one who developed and created the space around our TVETs because there was a missing gap in our education system. I am very proud that today our TVETs are a big portion of our higher education learning infrastructure. Let me go back to the funding model. The funding model, by the way, affects both our university students and also affects our TVET students. So what did I do? I did 3 things. Number one, we made a commitment as government that we are going to give every student 80% scholarship and loan. But because we could not afford, especially because the number of students, when we made that commitment, it was like 15 years ago. But you know, as the numbers increased in the university, it became difficult for us to meet that commitment. And so what ended up happening was that while we committed to pay 80%, we ended up paying 50%. Some cases, 45%. So what happened? There was a huge funding gap in our universities. A huge funding gap in our universities. And our universities were struggling. They couldn't pay for services, they couldn't pay lecturers, they couldn't run their programs, And we ended up with affecting the quality of education in our universities. You couldn't attend as many labs as was required. You couldn't attend as many practicals as you required. We ended up compromising on our education. So what did I do? I said, we need to be honest with ourselves. And we said, there are parents like William Ruto who can afford. Why would William Ruto be given 80%? Why would the child of William Ruto be given 80% scholarship? The same as a child of Mama Mboga. What happens is that both our children end up suffering. So we changed the model. We said, since there is a means testing instrument that has been used